Cool. Then let's start. All right. Welcome back, film noobs. It's been a minute, I know, but we've been super busy. Hopefully, in the next 2 weeks or so, you'll see the rest of us be back together back at our studio. Because right now I'm remotely talking to our next guest, as I have been for the last couple of sessions. But again, only because we've been super busy. But I'm glad to be able to sit down with a fellow filmmaker, and hopefully he will rejuvenate me for the next 2 weeks before we do this again. It's my pleasure to welcome Jethro Waters. I saw his movie. It was interesting. And we're going to talk about the interesting part. It's not a bad thing. Trust me, it's not. But we're going to hit it on head first. So Jethro, thank you for joining us. Go ahead, introduce yourself, sir, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. My name is Jethro Waters. I'm a writer and director. I live between New York and North Carolina, where I teach film at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And yeah, Gunfighter Paradise comes out tonight. And then on Saturday, we're at AMC Lincoln Square in Upper West Side. And then we go to LA to Lamley Theaters in March.
Wow, dude. Yeah, that's exciting because you. So let's talk about that in a little bit about theatrical release, right?
Mhm.
All right. So is this your first film as a director, well, full length film as a director?
So my first film was a documentary feature on a really renowned photographer named Burke Uzzle, who took a lot of famous photographs that everybody will know. That came out in 2020 and through PBS, and we did a nationwide release through theaters. And it's currently distributed by First Run Features, but that was my very first feature-length film.
Okay. So now this one is your brainchild from beginning. You said writer director. So from the conception of, oh man, I want to do Gun Paradise, to pre-production, production, post-production, and now distribution. It's all been your little baby magic of movie. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
that's all you. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about that. Going back to the conception of this film, and I know I called it interesting, but there's a good interesting with it, and then I'll get to that right now. What was the concept, or where did the idea of doing Gun Paradise come from?
Gunfighter Paradise came from just I grew up in a very Southern conservative Christian, upbringing. Although, my family's kind of split in very progressive, very conservative. So I had a lot of those languages going on. In my teen years, my blinders started to open a little bit wider. I started to look at more of what was going on in the world and American history. And the film is really just about kind of the wild hybrid of dark. I don't want to say dark. It's just there's a lot of darkness that is inside of the ideology of conservative Christianity, especially in the United States, and I feel that it's all based on fear. So the film is a satire and a film about how folks subscribe to Christianity, especially in the United States, based on fear rather than on an individual belief in kindness and a higher power and all those kinds of things. So that's kind of the central theme of the film. And I'd been wanting to make a film about that since I grew up in that world, for a very long time.
It is interesting. Man, I want to like ask a lot of different questions, and I'm trying to figure out where to start because, like I said, and I asked you before we started, is there anything that was off topic? But one of the things that I picked up on it was the religious factor. And to me, it is interesting because, like yourself, I was brought up, um, I don't know, well, Pentecostal. That's what I was brought up. I was brought up Pentecostal in the South, Texas, and so religious like yourself, we're very very strict, and it's almost to the T. You have to be a blind belief in the religion. There's no wiggle room. Otherwise, then you become like, oh, why are you questioning your belief? Then you're not a real true Christian. I'm like, whoa, wait, hold on. So when I was watching your film, I was like, oh man, it's uncomfortable. But it was like very uncomfortable because you're like, I know exactly what he's talking about. I know that feeling. So yeah, again, I'm trying not to like tell everything about the movie, but at the same time, it's one of those topics. I'm like, man, and religion is a weird topic because you don't know how the other person is going to perceive it.
Absolutely, absolutely. there have been so many people at film festivals and at screenings and interviews and folks like yourself who have been have said similar things where they're like, I was so uncomfortable in so many moments in the film, but not in a negative way. Just because I've been there, I understand that. I know those people that are in your film. I know how it feels to be there, thinking that, and it's just, it's a terrifying thing to grow up with an ideology baked into you where even if you just think the wrong thought, your immortal soul is at peril. Like that whole idea to me just was mind blowing once I kind of stepped back from it and started looking at it. And that's why the film is like it is, because I really wanted to lean into that, and for the folks who didn't grow up like that, I want to give them that experience of what that's actually like and how that's warped our country in a lot of ways. It really, really has warped our country and our sense of community and our sense of being kind and good to each other.
And you know what? I think it resonates even more now. And again, I'm not trying to get political. I'm not trying to get left or right. No, no, no. I'm talking what you said right now resonates so much. I'm talking about us as a community, us as a nation. We're going through that issue because again, it's being thrown at us to say, "Oh, if you don't think this way, then you're wrong. If you don't act this way, then you're wrong." Because we up here know what's better for you. You know what I mean? It's like almost those. Oh man, it's almost like drone society, really. When you start talking about it, you hit it at a microcosm level with religion, but it resonates as a whole because of what's going on. So I think you really hit
100%.
it perfectly. And I was watching it again. I was uncomfortable because I saw a lot of like just parallels. It's like, wow, dude, with my own personal life, what's going on, and I was like, ah, man, this dude's fucking. He's serious about it, but you're almost like, well, you said it yourself. It's all very satirical in nature, but at the same time, man, it's in your face. It really is.
Yeah. I'm very glad that that's how it landed, for you. And we need satire, and there's a lot of funny stuff in the South, and we've gotten bigger laughs in the South than we have anywhere else. Even though we're poking a lot of holes in Southern culture. I'm from the South, so I feel like I have every right to make fun of whatever I want to make fun of. But it's also, it is a love letter to the South, and the poetry of the South in a lot of ways. There's no big judgments being passed on Southerners or anything like that. There's just a lot of funny stuff that we're making fun of, and Southerners at the screenings that we've had have laughed harder than anybody else at the comedic elements or the dry humor or whatever you want to call it, the satire of the film, which has been a delight. But yeah, we are in a really dark place as a society, as Americans right now, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to shy away from that. I wanted to lean really, really hard, like far into that. I figure that's, that's what makes the film, or what's supposed to make the film relevant and hopefully resonate with folks.
No, I think you did an excellent job hitting that point, and I like the fact that you felt comfortable enough to pick on, well, partially your own culture, your own identity, but also the fact, and this, I miss this about film, that we give ourselves the license and the freedom to be able to express that and not feel like, oh shit, I'm going to be judged. Like, why is it that we can't, and again, I'm Mexican and I shouldn't be, but poking fun was like, oh, well, why don't we pick on our stereotypes? That cholo, that, this and that. Well, it's funny. I'm
Hmm.
not trying to degrade anybody. It's just funny. I'm here to entertain you. And now, if you like if I sprinkle a little bit of message, like message, and you get it, then by all means, please do so. You know what I mean? But I think we're missing the point of us being entertainers, us being able to captivate you for that 90 minutes and be like, hey, dude, have a good time. Here's part of my culture because I'm celebrating it. Who else is going to show the Southern folk the way you did? Because again, it is showing because you identify, you know exactly what they're like. And you're like, okay, well, let me show a little bit of that. But at the same time, I'm going to elbow nudge you, just, like, ha ha ha, you get it, you get it. So I love that. I love that, Jethro. I want more of that. And it's sad that we can't do that.
I agree, and I mean, if you are taking yourself, I mean, and the film is very dark and very serious, for half of the film and very unserious for half the film. I mean, I don't know the percentages, but you know, it's somewhere around there. And I agree with you 100%. I think that, you know, we have to be able to laugh at ourselves, right? We really like, you know, as a Southerner, I know how ridiculous some of the customs and the culture are that I am that are part of who I am, you know, and everybody else gets it. And so you have to be able to poke holes in that and entertain, like what you're saying. You have to be able to not take it so seriously, and you know, and I've loved the fact that I kind of took for granted. I thought a lot of Southerners were going to hate the film, but they've embraced it so much because they get it, so they get it so deeply. You know, when I'm talking about grits and red eye gravy, a lot of the country doesn't know what red eye gravy is or how it's made, but when I went, you know, showed it in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and all these other places, people just fell out of their chairs when I showed making red eye gravy, you know, which I love that because they know I'm poking fun, but I love it's amazing. You shouldn't eat it a lot because it's horrible for your health. But it's you know, but it was really fun. A lot of fun moments like that in the South, and you have to take risks like that. You know, you can't be too precious. That's what I find is really troubling is where there's so many films being made from A to B with the typical narrative through line, and everybody's being really precious and really careful. And if you're not out taking risk, especially right now, and trying to at least show a few things that might not have been shown on screen before, what are we doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, again, and I'm glad you said it earlier when that you teach. So I'm ecstatic about the fact that you think this way, and I'm pretty sure you teach this way. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things that, well, we have to teach the next generation. It's like, dude, we're filmmakers. We're here to either entertain, educate, or make you just feel something. That's really it. That's the core of everything that we do. Um, and for you to say that, I'm like, man, that's badass. I'm glad so many other because it is. I'm sorry, Jethro. I see and I hear you, and it's a breath of fresh air because again, we're so stuck on these Hollywood cookie cutter movies,
Hmm.
and that's what we've been told that it's okay now. You know what I mean?
Right, right. I don't see, you know, you see it every once in a while. There's a little sparkle of somebody out there taking a big swing and making, you know, taking risks in their movies and making something, you know, that people might not have actually stumbled into before. And you know, it's not for everybody, right? I guarantee there's going to be plenty of people that watch the film and are like, I do not understand what's going on. This is not my cup of tea. And that is absolutely fine. Um, that being said, I've been absolutely delighted that, you know, a majority of people and film critics and audience members who have watched the film have said, I want to watch this two or three more times so I can, because I got a lot out of it, but I know there's a lot more baked in there. And that's been a
Hmm.
delight because that's what you hope. That's what you always hope, you know, if you're making, you know, a film that's got surrealism baked into it and it's a non-linear kind of thing. And you hope that people will lean into it and ask questions. And that's what the film is about. It's about, you know, it's not, I'm not making any absolute exclamation point period, you know, end of sentence statements. It's asking a lot of questions about who we are as Americans, right? And I think we need. I would love it if we saw a lot more of that. Just like a lot of people always say, you know, you go and make the film that you want to see on the big screen, right? Not go make the film that you really love, that you grew up watching and studying. You take little pieces of that and let it inspire you. But you know, you should go out and make the film that you know about, and that something that you want to see. You know, the story you want to tell.
Yeah, that's so true, so true. Because again, yeah, we always do preach that, and we study the great classics, but at the same time, we never really focus on that. Hey, dude, and I use this line now. It's like, tell me a story, which is not any story. Tell me your story. And I think that's the point that you've made with your film is that you're telling me your story. And
Mhm.
again, I love that because again, I haven't seen anybody really poke fun of Southern humor or Southern. I don't know how you say it without being like. It's not really the culture of it, but it's more of the little nuances
Mhm.
of Southerners.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess I got it more because yeah, I've been stationed in Fort Polk. Um, I've been stationed in Georgia, so I got all that culture the difference in the barbecue, the way people talk. One of my roommates, he was from Tennessee, and I learned what mutton was. And so when I saw you in that scene where y'all are taking the couch and just running around in the field, I was like, man, I miss that day. So little Ford F1, I don't know if it was, no, Ford Ranger, just mudding and throwing mud everywhere, and you're like, oh hell yeah, that was a great time, and you didn't
Mhm.
care,
Mhm.
And so when I saw that scene, I was like, man, that is so funny. I miss that.
It was, and that's what we did growing up. I was born in Austin, Texas. I was there till I was 11, and then we moved to very rural North Carolina. So I went from having this kind of city kid mentality of 7-Elevens and parks and bikes in every race under the sun. Like in Austin, but I got to North Carolina and it was a very different scenario, way out in the country, way out in the sticks. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, as teenagers, we just got bored and would hook up a couch to the back of a truck and drive around a field and drink tequila. That's just what we did. So it was very fun to throw in and very honest moments of just complete goofball bullshit that we get up to in the South. I mean, people do it everywhere, all the United States. It's not just the South, but that's straight out of me being a teenager. We actually did that stuff, and those guys that are in the film, are actually my actual friends who I did that with. So it's just kind of a recreation of our teenage years.
Nice. Now, I let me talk about your actors, because your main actor, and a lot of people are going to miss this. Your main actor was, I don't want to say flat, because he wasn't flat, but he was dry.
Mm,
And is, again, it's not a negative thing, because the way he did it, I even want to say, was a little masterful, because it's hard for you to be that dry, constant pace,
mm,
and find that pace without being flat. You know what I mean?
absolutely, I do.
Let's talk about a little bit of that. Was that a decision, or from you, or collaborative, or how did y'all go about, like, okay, this is the way we're gonna take that perspective on him?
So that really dry performance. This is a funny story. So that uh, the lead actor, I never intended to be in a movie, but that's actually me with that face paint on. And so I just used the pseudonym Brass Cubas because I didn't really want to have my name in the credits because I never intended to be in the movie. So I
You basically
cast the
got me. Oh man.
I cast the film and we were ready to go. And then my good friend who I had cast for the role ended up, when we had our timeline set up, he was going to have his daughter, his second child, right when we were going to start filming. And so I had everything ready to go except for the lead. And I was like, I've already got everything booked. And I said, I'm gonna give this 2 weeks. I'll put the makeup on, see how it goes. If it doesn't work, I'll throw it in the trash can and we'll wait until I can cast somebody. I put the makeup on, started running the scenes with the rest of the cast, and it seemed to work. So we just ran with it. And there was a very deliberate decision for that very dry tone for that character, and the southern drawl and the deep voice and all of that kind of stuff was because I wanted that character to be very kind of dissociated with everything else. Like he's kind of just floating around, in this ghostly way. And for me, the things that are really dry and distant are much funnier than the things that are really projected at you on screen. Unless it's Mel Brooks, then those are the best comedies ever, right? Like over
Yeah.
the top, fantastic. But and everything else, and really strange satires and stuff, I really love dry humor. And I just figured it would land a lot better if that character was kind of this person you can't really relate with. But Joel, his friend, is the relatable everyman, and so they've got that dynamic where you have Stoner, who's way off, just kind of as this dry person delivering these really dry lines, and Joel's an actual real human being. So that was a very deliberate process to go through. But to go back to why that's a funny story is because my executive producer Nancy Bursky, who is a renowned filmmaker and one of the greatest documentarians ever, she executive produced the film, and I told her all about it, but I didn't tell her that I had lost my lead and that I was going to jump in and do it because I don't intend to be in any other films, and definitely didn't intend to be in this one. But I didn't tell her that I'd done it, and I sent her the first cut, And she just, she called me immediately and she was just laughing her head off, and if you haven't seen Nancy Bursky's films, go watch them because they are just absolutely mind blowing. She unfortunately passed away 2 years ago, was very tragic, but wonderful, wonderful person. Anyways, she called me after she saw the first cut, and she's laughing her head off. She's just like, this film is wild. Oh my goodness. She knew all about it and read the script, but when she saw the cut, she had a lot to talk about. And so and she's a lifelong New Yorker, so we talk so much about the South and all these things. And she ended up saying, you know, there's a couple of scenes where that guy looks a lot like you. And I just laughed and I told her, I was like, Nancy, it's just megalomania. I just cast it so that guy kind of looks like me because, and she laughed, and I messed with her for a good hour on the phone where she would and she's like, yeah, there's that one scene. I mean, it's scary how much he looks like you in that one scene. And finally I was like, yeah, Nancy, that's actually me. And her response was, you little shit. And then we had a good laugh about it and went from there. But yeah, it was just kind of in a panic. What do we do? I want to make this film. I don't have a lead, so we'll give it a shot and see if it works out. And everybody watched the dailies, and we watched the cut, and everybody seemed to think it worked, so we did it.
That again, it worked. I mean, I was asking about your actor, so yeah, it definitely worked. It's one of those like, okay, cool. Because again, most of the time you don't see that, especially that big of a role,
Mm,
as a lead. It's
yeah.
hard to be able to step away from the camera and still direct with that much body of work for your actor as a lead, and still be the director and be able to see the whole picture. Because as a director,
Hmm.
I always think my job isn't to tell you what to do; it's just to make sure I oversee the whole body moving in the right direction.
Right.
To have those two, even when they've asked me like, "Oh, do your little sneak peek of you being in the scene," I'm like, "Okay, somebody needs to watch the camera because I can't focus on both. I'm not that good." You know what I mean?
No, it's a really hard thing. I mean, making movies is extremely hard, no matter what genre. As you well know, as a filmmaker, it's really difficult. What made it a lot easier for me was that this film was hyper independent. I used all my friends who are all, if all the actors are non-actors, nobody's acted before, but they're all very talented artists and musicians, and they've been on stages. Some of them on very big stages, so they're okay with performing. And so that's why I believe they did such a good job, and I knew them really, really well, so I knew how to kind of coach them a little bit. They didn't need a lot. The only name actor in the film is Jessica Hecht, and she does the voiceover for the mother. Jessica's been in so many things, but everybody else are non-actors. But it was really difficult, but also just a total blast because all these people I know so well. They've been my lifelong friends. Sometimes we had a crew of 8, sometimes we had a crew of 2 on set. So, and everybody's got kids, everybody's got full-time jobs. They're doing nights and weekends and whenever they can get free to come help me make this film. And while it was insanely difficult, it was also just an absolute blast. So we had a lot of fun.
Man, I'm really surprised of that. Well, in a way, because as independent guys, most of us, yeah, we don't have the big 200 man power with the grip trucks and the art
Hmm.
trucks and everything else. So I know we depend a lot on our friends and family and whatnot. But to hear that even at at your level, you're still having a crew of 2 help you
Hmm.
out on a day where you're like, hey, like, we gotta shoot. I just need somebody to hold the camera.
Right.
Look here, press that record button, leave it alone, just watch it, make sure it's good.
Right.
Um, so that's pretty badass, man. Now I know you got distribution, so we'll hit that in a little bit. But I want to keep talking about your 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 actor and the interactions between you, because it's interesting. You're taking two roles: the primary actor, the director, but you're also having to deal with interactions with other actors. And I think one of the biggest problems that I have when I'm teaching young, up and coming creatives is how to interact with your actors, because that
Hmm.
language, there's always that language barrier. We both don't speak the same language, even in film, as an actor and as a director. How would you say was your little interaction, because you are the primary lead, you're also directing, but now you're dealing with other actors because you have to have those interactions, which they have. They were really good. They were. I like the differences in each and every single one of your roles that you casted. The best friend, the what was she? The one that came in at the end. Um, because y'all came back from the field and she came into the house.
Oh, Rhoda,
Yeah,
Margarita Crank. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yes, yes. I like
yeah.
her act. She was really, really good.
She's
Um,
great.
so tell me about some of those interactions, at least from your perspective on both.
Yeah, so it's interesting directing non-actors and then directing folks who are really seasoned, even just in a voiceover, Jessica Hecht, who's been, Breaking Bad, Friends, all over Broadway, she's all over Netflix. She's just absolutely brilliant. So when we did her acting, which was voiceover, I gave her the script, what she was reading, and she's in a lot of the film doing voiceover. There was only one direction I needed to give her, which was one section that I wanted to be a little bit more airy, a little bit more ethereal. And she was like, "Oh, got it," and she did it, and everything else was one take. She's just when you have somebody who's done this for 30 years at the top of the game, they don't need a lot. They just need maybe if you wanted it slower, a little bit faster, little very subtle, directions, and they know what to do because they've been doing it. With people who haven't, I found most of the notes that I was giving was just kind of a reminder that none of us really know each other in this film. We know each other in real life, but everybody was so comfortable with everybody else because we all know each other. I just kind of had to remind folks, okay, you don't actually know that person, so let's have a little bit more distance between your delivery, and also just kind of the one direction that I've given, even with in music videos with some of my heroes I've made music videos with, and in this film particularly, it was more just kind of a give me a this or give me a that, and usually very short, concrete direction, as in let's take it down just a little bit, or let's a little bit slower. It's usually that was the only thing I needed to give somebody was like, let's go a little bit slower, because usually people get amped up and they're ready to go and they're going a little bit too hard, and most of the time, the old cliche that always holds true is less is more, and I've always found that to be true in directing people, whether it's music videos, commercials, documentaries, narratives. It's usually you just kind of pulling people back a little bit because they're giving you a little bit more than what you actually need, and things feel a little bit more naturalistic when they're when you dial them down a little bit.
Now, you still okay? There you go. Talking about the tone because that's where we're heading with that. As far as the pacing in the film, again, deliberate. Was it like, oh, yeah, okay, this is exactly how I want my pacing to be because you're talking about dialing it down with everybody else. And again, if you're referencing Southern people, there is a pacing to their lives, um, as opposed to I'm pretty sure in New York it's a lot faster paced. Being from Austin versus San Antonio, it's ridiculously different. We take our time. We're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. We'll eventually get there." Austin's like, no, no, rush, 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 rush. So when you do that, the tone of that film, the pacing that you found yourself, again, was it preconceived or you found it while you were filming?
Yeah, I think it was more of a when I wrote the script out, I kind of thought about exactly what you're talking about, which is the pace of the South is very different. When I'm here, like right now in Manhattan, when I go outside, things are fast and intense and fine. I love New Yorkers. There's some super nice people. There's a misconception about New Yorkers that people need to be corrected on, but the way folks operate here is much different, like you're saying, than it is in North Carolina. And so that pacing and that atmosphere and that tone is something I really wanted to convey. The title of the film is Gunfighter Paridise, so people might go into it thinking it's going to be some jumping through windows, everybody shooting in every direction, and like blood spraying everywhere. And it's not that. It's a very it takes its time, and there's some intense moments for sure, but they're very, specifically dropped into kind of a very the pace of it is very southern to wrap that up into to sum all that up is it takes its time, in the same way that Southerners, they're not rushing around and walking insanely fast like everybody in North Carolina
Yeah,
is. It's very, very different, like you said.
because there was some times when it you held that shot for just a little bit longer, and sometimes it felt a little uncomfortable because of the length of the shot.
Hmm.
Um, but if you really think about it, that again goes back to the pacing and the tone of your film. It fits well
Mm.
because it was within the same world that you had built versus, oh, we're going to cut here, we're going to cut here, we're going to cut here. So your pacing and your cutting and your editing was within the same kind of world or that you had established, which was again very I loved it. It was one I was like, man, it's interesting because you don't see that very often. And going back to
Mm.
what we talked about earlier, and it's just refreshing. And I'm like, man, okay, cool. How much of this was like pre-planned, or how much was it, conceived during filming? Because sometimes we have those happy little accidents on film. You're like, ooh, you know,
There was a
I,
lot of those. I will say there's a lot of happy accidents, there, and you have to roll with them because sometimes you hit a vein of gold you did not see coming, and you got to be ready to dig it up and use it in your film, and it happens a lot, especially in indie films, when you're really just going for it every day, something will pop up and you have to just lean into it, and that happened a lot on this film.
what were some of those moments that you had?
So the mummified cat that shows up
Yes,
in the film, that
yes,
was that was not scripted. I was location scouting in the barn behind the house, the main house, and I stepped on this thing and it went, and I was like, "Whoa, what's that?" And I looked down in the dirt and I saw this, cat with his teeth, bared, and a perfectly preserved leather cat that was mummified, and I'd never seen that before. And so I got some gloves and picked it up and dusted it off, and I was like, "This is unbelievable. I'm going to write this into the script, and I think I know how." And that was just a found object that made that shows up several times in the film.
yes, it does.
Yeah,
I thought it was gonna be your MacGuffin for a minute. I was like, he's got to come back to that. He's got to circle back around.
yeah. Yeah, no, that was a really fun thing to put in the film and to work with because it's just so weird. I've never seen one. I don't know anybody else who's ever seen one. So it wasn't a prop. That was a real mummified cat that for probably for at least a decade had been sitting there in the dirt, preserved perfectly. But yeah, and there's also things with the script too. I'd written out a very specific thing, but at the end, my buddy Chris Bauer, who plays the neighbor, is a 6'8" tall, voice like a mountain, the sweetest person on earth, great filmmaker. He plays the main antagonist in the film, and I gave him what I wanted him to say, and then he got back to me the day of shooting and said, "By the way, I read the Old Testament for like weeks preparing for this," and I was like, "Wow, okay." And so I set him loose, and he nailed every line that was written in the script. But then he started ad-libbing all of these beautiful things that he was drawing from having read the Old Testament and spitballing them out. And I just let him roll for almost, I think I got 18 minutes of him ad-libbing stuff. And it was just unbelievably good. He really, really went for it. And so, when you see somebody doing something like that, you just have to let them go. And it turned out just to be wonderful. Chris knocked it out of the park. I was so impressed with what he did.
See, I love that because one of the things that I do ask for my actors, I'm like, dude, make me believe that it's not you. Like for real, go home, do your homework. If you come back and you tell me like your buddy did, it's like, dude, no, I think my character would do this, and you convince me that you've done that little bit of homework, and it's not a lot when you're creating backstories for your own character. It's your character. You know what I mean? And so if you convince me that, hey, dude, I wrote him wrong, well shit. Convince me I did wrong, but give me that, that, like you said, that nuggets of gold where he's telling you, he's like, no, 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 I read the whole Bible because I think my character would be XYZ, and
Mhm.
there you go. And it works better.
100%. And also I think there's a lot of the film is exactly how it was written in the script. There's also plenty of the film that when we would be in the room and you only have a certain amount of time, when you're running super indie, style and small crews, and I wanted it to feel as natural as possible. That's what we all do, right? And so with the actors, if we were reading, if they were reading a line, and it felt flat or felt weird, I would just say, that doesn't feel right. How would you say this, right? As you, not. And they're like, oh, well, I would probably, it's easier for me to say like this, and then we'll try that. And almost every time we did that, it just landed, boom, and then move on to the next shot because it just felt so natural, And I think, you know, you in that world, in the very independent world, there's times when you just really, you cannot be married to the script and think that it's perfect and be really precious with it. If you're able to get that dialogue and get that scene shot, and your actors look and feel and sound natural, and that story is landing, that's what you care about. It doesn't matter how precious you are with the words you've written in your script. At the end of the day, nobody's going to know, nobody's going to care. What they're going to care about is do your characters feel natural, and however you get them there is the most important thing you can do. And giving them freedom to try to figure out how to best deliver that and to say that is really important. That I tell students all the time. You might be an amazing writer, and a lot of you are. But when you get on set, and if something's not working, don't be precious. Just figure out how to make it work.
I fully agree on that because a lot of times we do get married to our work, and it's always like, oh, well, I got to kill off my darlings. Well, I mean, you have to find that story and within what you wanted to originally shoot. And a lot of times we find it when we're in on set with our actors actually coming through, like you said, when they've done their homework, they're coming in and they have this mindset like, hey, my character would do this. Can we try? But you also have to give them that freedom. And you're absolutely right, Jethro. A lot of times we don't. But I'm glad at the independent level we're able to, like, okay, let's play around with the freedom of creating that story. We're not set to where some executive yelling at us because, like, hey, dude, you're running time, or scripty, like, oh, what the fuck, you throwing the script out of, well, you have to throw the script away sometimes.
Hmm.
You let that story breathe, let that camera keep rolling because he's on a roll, he's on fire, bro. And so I love that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, now that your film is done, let's jump forward, because I really want to talk about a little bit more of distribution at the independent level, and how did you go about going through it? Because again, and a lot of the people that we talk to are all independents. We don't have the money for marketing, we don't have the money for getting an agent and stuff like that. A lot of times, which we mostly should be looking at. So let's talk about your process for that.
Yeah, so with my first feature, which was a documentary, we did the film festival route, and luckily, PBS showed up and asked for it, and then we had a distributor show up and ask for it, and so but that's a very different world, as you know. Documentary features is a very different world than scripted narrative. For this, since we did do film festivals, and it was, not any big ones. We didn't land any big ones. Nancy had been the person that I'd put in charge, obviously as my executive producer and someone who has all of her films did Berlin and Venice and Telluride and Sundance and all that kind of stuff. So I thought my job was done. I was like, I've got Nancy as my EP. I'm good to go. She's going to make all the calls. And sadly, Nancy passed, and so that wasn't an option, right? So we just got it out however we could get it out, as you do, to a lot of different independent film festivals, and we did that for about a year. And then after that, I knew it was going to be, especially for a film like this, I was going to have to do a lot of work, in order to get it out and get it seen. And so after festivals, we started booking screenings at colleges and universities, and I started shopping around for publicists. And that's the key, really, is to be able to find a really good publicist who gets your film and who wants to take you on. And yeah, you do need a little bit of money for that, but it's not insane. You still do it on an independent budget. And so luckily we found some extraordinary publicists who really loved the film, and luckily they knew Nancy as well, because they had worked with Nancy before, and so they were able to get the word out, and then we got AMC booked, and then Lamley in LA booked, and they started spreading the word to the press. And so I think one of the key things to do is to And it's really hard to do on an independent level. It really is hard to book screenings and to get people, motivated to come out and watch, watch a film. But I think I can tell you firsthand, I've spent a good solid year doing that. And now it's paying off. Now we've got this amazing publicist. We've got our theatrical launch coming up. There was a lot of through the independent festivals, we got a lot of offers from distributors, from what used to be distributors that I would have been like, oh wow, okay, this is great. They've turned into more of aggregators where they just kind of absorb and so I turned them down. We had like 6 offers, and I knew that the film would disappear if I signed a distribution deal with one of them, and I knew we wouldn't play theaters. I knew we wouldn't get good press. And so we're still just releasing solo right now. We don't have a designated distributor, and I'm fine with that. So we'll keep rolling independently through theaters until we do find a distributor that makes sense for us and that can do a good job with the film, and then move out to other markets, like Europe and Asia and other places like that. But right now we're actually just now getting started. As of today and tomorrow at AMC, and then in March at Lamley. This is really the kind of the beginning of the film getting out there in the world. We just had a great article land in the New York Sun this morning. It's a wonderful review. A lot more coming. But going back to your original question, I would just say for independent folks, really focus on trying to find a champion for your movie who gets it,
Yeah.
and doing your research as far as what publicists really do a good job with independent films of your genre, that you can see, oh, they did a great job with this film. Get in touch with them and try to get that ball rolling, and book your own screenings. I've done that for the last year. I mean, we're talking like universities in North Carolina, in Vermont, in New York, in California, and just slowly building, this awareness about the film. And a lot of folks are really looking for this kind of film, and so that's helped us a lot, because they'll go and lobby for the film to get it brought to their city, and so we've been touring the film around and bringing it to other folks. So it's a lot of work when you don't just hand it off to a distributor and let them do their thing. But I was not willing just to have done all this work on this film and just let it go die at the bottom of Amazon Prime somewhere with a distributor who doesn't do any work, you know?
No, I feel you on that, and I'm glad you're saying that because a lot of times as independent guys, we get caught up in the hustle because we're told, just dude, if you don't get your movie out now, you're gonna miss that moment in time, and you're never gonna see the light of day. And most distributors always pitch to you like, "Oh, bro, give it to me. I'll get it on Amazon. I'll get it on Tubi. I'll get it on this net." But you really don't need them for that.
Right.
Like you said, they're
Absolutely.
aggregators. A lot of
They
them have
are.
turned aggregators, and it's
Yep.
sad because they're doing the same job you could do with a little bit of homework. You could get it on a lot of these platforms, but they're now charging you what a normal distributor would have charged you to do your own work if you wanted to.
Yep. Yep. The world is changing, and there's only a few really good distributors who do what distributors used to do left. A lot of them, like you're saying, they're just aggregators, and you can do all the same stuff that they can do. Like you can do it yourself. It's just a matter of if you want to put that work in to get it out, on those same streamers. And yeah, Paramount and Hulu and a lot of obviously Netflix, they don't really buy any films anymore, but a lot of the major streamers aren't going to look at you without a distributor, and but that's just the reality of it. But if you do enough work and get it out in front of enough eyeballs yourself, the likelihood of a proper distributor coming around and you finding a sales agent for international territories definitely increases. So I think it's unfortunate that that's the way that it is right now, but it's also hopeful in the way that if you are a very, very determined independent filmmaker, you can get a lot of eyeballs on your film without a distributor, when that used to never be the case. You used to never be able to do that.
And again, I'm glad you are saying that you took a year, and it's a process that is taking you a year to finally go into the film, to go into the theater distribution process,
Hmm.
because a lot of us need to hear that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we want to go to festival, and we should, again, we're going to be the festival freaking highlight, and somebody's going to pick us up. No, the Kevin Smith days are gone. They
Yeah.
really are.
Yep.
Um, or the Tarantino days. It doesn't happen like that anymore. but I'm glad you're saying that it's taking you a minute, not because I'm glad that you, but the fact that you are putting in the work, and a lot of us need to hear that because it is at an independent level harder for us to put it out there, but it's worthwhile because you've done it. So that's my example. It's like, oh, it's been done.
Yeah.
You're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be done. It absolutely can be done, and it's just about a matter of doing the work and making the film that people want, making a film that people want to see in the first place. And then understanding that as soon as you get that done and you've shown it to people and there's a lot of positive reaction to it, that the film festivals, that's actually only when the work begins truly. And then, and also we have to it's a different time now. There used to be this timeline on your film. Once it was released, it had a date of a release date, and once a year had passed, it was too old to go to this and do that. That's no longer the case for independent films. There's a lot of films that came out 2 or 3 years ago that are just now finding their legs now, and then they go do a year run in theatrical, make a big splash, and then they get distribution. And then, I mean, independent films have a much longer life cycle than any films used to, because we live in a different age now, and that's also a positive for independent filmmakers like me and you and everyone else, and for my students as well. I'm like, don't think about it as panicking that you've only have a year by the time your film hits a film festival to get a distributor, or it's going to die and disappear. It's like, no, you have to just be prepared to suck it up and keep working on it for several years if that's what it takes in order to get it out.
Yeah. And you are absolutely right because that mentality of, oh, a year, that's your timeline. You can't hustle it up, and you can't get a distributor because that was always the case. If you can't get a distributor within that year, it's not going to happen for you. You're not going to get your film. It's going to die, and it's going to live in some weird little shelf, you know,
Right. Yeah.
in limbo or something.
Yep. No, I mean, it's, we hit our first, and I've made some changes to the film since, and very minor changes, soundtrack and little tweaks here and there. But I mean, we premiered our film March of 2024. It was the very first film festival we played. And right now, almost exactly 2 years later, a couple weeks shy of 2 years, we're hitting theaters. You know what I mean? And so we did a year of film festivals, and then I've done a year with my wife, Sarah, who's a producer, and Kyle, my other producer, and a lot of other folks. We've just been working solid for a year to find the right people to get the film in front of and get the ball rolling, and it's now starting to take off. And so it's just a matter of sticking with it. If you've got something that you believe in truly and that a lot of other people believe in, you just have to really, really stick with it.
And that's awesome. I'm looking at my time and I'm running out here, and I want to keep talking to you. So maybe I could bring you back and we could keep talking, especially because, like, say, you just started the theatrical release, and I would love to see the where you end up and talk about that process. It's just I'm running out of time, but and
Oh,
you
no,
we
no, of
start.
course we can totally do another session at some point, and we'll do a follow up and talk about where the film is and what's been going on. No problem.
Wow, I would love that, bro. I would
Cool.
because again, it helps us, the rest of us, that if you could do it, we can too. You know what I mean? And that's the whole point of why we do this. Because I
Right.
want other people to be like, hey, here's somebody from totally somewhere else that's doing it. He's an independent guy. He's championing it. He's doing it. Let's either support him or ride alongside with him. You know what I
Right.
mean?
100%. 100%. Absolutely. I would be a pleasure to come back and talk about the process, because I'm with you. I think all of the independent side of film, they need to hear about what's actually working, and it's very helpful to be able to share those kinds of stories.
Awesome, bro. Now, real quick question, and I always ask this, and it's almost a biased question because you are a teacher, film school or no film school.
That is all up to the person. I didn't go to film school. I wanted to, though. I applied and didn't get in because I was a shitty student in high school. So they didn't. I don't blame them for not taking me. I got terrible grades except for English. I did great in English. Everything else just bombed. But I really wanted to go to film school for directing and screenwriting. But I didn't do it. I just kind of got into it, read books, picked up cameras, wrote scripts, just and I ended up making a lot of stuff before breaking into the industry. But I have students, that know so much more at 19, 20, and 21 than I did at 30. I mean, like vastly. And not just like technical, oh, I know what this lens does and that filter. I mean, just like in general, like how to make a film, how to run a set, how to get a crew together, how to collaborate properly, all of those things that are so important, how to read a script, how to think about it, how to block, scenes. There's some, and it depends on the film school too. UNCSA, University of North Carolina School of the Arts, where I'm teaching, I am wildly impressed with the faculty there because most of the faculty there are active filmmakers, and that's what they want. They want people who are actively out in the world making films so that they can teach students exactly how it's done and how the film industry is right now. And I just have so many great colleagues at that school. And I worked at Brooklyn College for a while. And there's amazing filmmakers there as well. But I really think it just depends on the person. If you want to just go spend 4 years just cooking and stewing with a bunch of other people, they're only there because they want to make films. A lot of people end up with their crews and they're all moving to New York or moving to LA when they graduate, and they've got their own film crew, which is awesome. I'm so envious of my students sometimes when I look at the sound stages they're working on and all the stuff, and I'm like, man, wow, I would have loved to have done this at 18. But my life path has been much different, and I don't regret it at all. I think there's a lot of people who don't need film school or don't want film school, and it wouldn't benefit them. But there's a lot of people that there's some really acclaimed filmmakers that came out of UNC. That Jeff Nichols, a lot of folks have done a lot of really great films that have come out of that school. So I just think it depends on the person and what you want.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. Last thing for the last couple minutes, any shout outs, thank yous. This is your time to shine. Let us know where we could find you, where we could find the film. So floor's yours.
100%. No, you can find the film tonight at AMC Lincoln Square on the Upper West Side of Manhattan at 7 p.m. We have the New York Times own Glenn Kinney, the critic from the New York Times and from RogerEbert.com, is coming to host the Q&A and a conversation after the film. And then we are doing the same time, 7 p.m. AMC Lincoln Square, 13 on tomorrow, Saturday, and then we go to Lamley Theaters March 6th through the 12th. So those tickets will go on sale soon, and then we'll be in a lot of theaters in North Carolina and a lot of other places coming up soon, which we'll announce. If anybody wants to find out when and where, gunfightermovie.com is the place. That's where we post up all the information and all the dates that are coming out. As far as shout outs, I want to give a big thank you to my former student named Riley Kennedy from Brooklyn College, who became an executive producer on this film because she helped us out so much. And she's amazing. So I want to thank her, the whole cast and crew, and obviously my wife, Sarah, who's a producer on all my films, who just knocks it out of the park. And Mr. Tom Chandler, who's another executive producer on the film. But that's it. That's it for my shout outs.
All right. Jethro, thank you so much for being with us, taking time out. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate all the knowledge that you've pretty much dropped on me. I love it. Again, I'm wholeheartedly inviting you back because I think we still have more conversation and hopefully you will come back. If you don't, I'll be a little sad, but I understand. I understand.
No,
Uh,
I will definitely come back. You let me know, and once we're a little farther along in the theatrical, and we got some follow up, then we'll get back on and we'll talk some more.
awesome. Film noobs, thank y'all very much. Again, hit the like, subscribe. Not me, but Jethro. Follow him. The metadata helps everything. They need it. We as independent filmmakers need that metadata. So go over to his socials. Hit the like on him. Follow him. Trust me, the movie is worth it. It's a little quirky, but once you get into it and you understand the mentality, guys, you will love it. Until next time, keep watching films, support indie filmmakers. We will see y'all. Bye, guys.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Jethro.